Hey team, I am delighted to be here with Jojo Rouse from the UK Transition Plan Taskforce. And Jojo, you must be incredibly proud because you've just pulled off not one, but two very successful events, launching the draft framework. How does it all feel, having all that hard work behind you?
Yeah, well, it's great. Thank you for coming to both of the events as well.
It's my pleasure.
It feels good to have the launch complete. Obviously the major work was before COP itself where we prepared the documents, but no, it feels great. Very happy that those two events are finished as well.
So for all our friends back in Australia that might not be familiar with your work, where did the Transition Plans Taskforce work program come from?
So at COP27, our UK Chancellor at the time, who is now Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, announced the creation of a task force to mandate transition plans for UK listed companies. It's since then evolved over the past year into becoming a transition plan task force. So set up by the UK government, but actually now is a collaboration of all sectors, so private sector, public sector, NGOs and academia. So yeah, that's where we started.
And that was really apparent at the events, just the incredible sort of group that is built up around the task force. What are you all trying to achieve? What do you mean when you say transition plan?
Transition, that's an interesting question around the definition of a transition plan. In terms of what we're trying to achieve, we are trying to create and set a gold standard for transition plans. So obviously lots and lots of companies have committed to some sort of net zero target, but the plans that sit behind those targets are sometimes non-existent and often varying in quality. And so the idea is that we need to create a single standalone framework that can be compared from plan to plan and drive higher quality disclosures and also ultimately behaviours within companies as well to do the right activities to get to these macro plans that have already been set.
And I suppose one of the reasons why you want consistency across plans is so that financiers, investors, and shareholders can kind of do a like-for-like comparison of what one company is doing versus another. Because at the moment, there's all kinds of approaches to transition planning, and even in some cases, many cases probably, there's goals. There might be some piecemeal activity within companies, but they don't really have a really robust internal strategy for how they're going to achieve decarbonisation.
Yeah, for sure. And actually what goes into what some companies have created and called a transition plan just varies a lot at the moment. So some organisations will have basically a strategy and then kind of a little bit of a one-pager. Some companies will have really lengthy documents that are quite hard to digest and understand. But I think that's the key to creating a single framework, is that the actual inputs to each of the different plans will be the same, so they'll be comparable, which they're not at all at the moment.
So the reason why we found each other is because this very much mirrors some work that the EEC has been doing with ClimateWorks Centre back in Australia in parallel, right? So we come to this conclusion that there was this great moment of opportunity with all these companies making net zero commitments, but the reality was you talked to 5 different companies and they had 5 different plans and they varied wildly in terms of their quality. And so there's this moment where we can support businesses to translate that aspiration to action and a clear and consistent framework. It gives the investors and the markets a sense of what's going on within the business. But importantly, it also gives a sort of a straightforward framework that businesses can adopt that they know has been sort of tested. It's been considered really carefully by experts in the space. And they can implement that with some confidence that that it's going to sort of underpin substantive action on achieving that net zero commitment.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
So for folk that follow this space, that are likely familiar with other initiatives, the one that's gotten a lot of attention in Australia is the TCFD. Is this duplicative? How does it interact with framework like TCFD?
Yeah, so we do get asked that sort of thing quite a lot. So in terms of TCFD at the moment do ask for transition plans on a disclose, compose or explain basis. They have some high-level guidance in terms of what you should include in a transition plan, and there's 4 elements in their guidance. And the TPT goes kind of a layer beyond that in terms of detail.
Yep.
So we have 5 elements that, if you're familiar with any of the work of GFANs, they map exactly onto the GFANs framework as well.
Yep.
And I think it should form part of the TCFD reporting. So you wouldn't need to do, like if you complied with the TPT like recommendations, then that should also be like fine for your TCFD reporting. So it shouldn't be kind of duplicative. It should be an improvement on what you would have done just on the kind of current guidance of TCFD.
It's kind of like that next level of detail, and
Yeah.
like giving businesses the tool set they need and the framework they need to operationalise. And that's something that has really attracted me to this work. Is it's kind of very practical in terms of what Faith is trying to achieve within their businesses. And the other thing that was really exciting when we caught up, my colleague Holly Taylor and I were in the UK in the middle of the year. We caught up with the Taskforce. Was this insight that we'd sort of come to independently, and you came to as well, which is that across sectors, the high-level principles are the same in terms of the framework that you use, but then you need to kind of, underneath that, you need to have this sector-specific guidance, right? And I understand that's what the next tranche of work that you're going to be doing is going to be focused on.
Yeah, that's right. So at the moment, our publication that we launched yesterday is sector neutral.
Yep.
So just one document that applies to all sectors, real economy and financial institutions as well.
Yep.
But of course, like certain elements are more or less important depending on the sector. So that's our next kind of piece of work to have a look at, trying to do sort of a bit more sector-specific work. But it won't cover all sectors, so we need to kind of finalise the sectors that we are focused on, and it will be predominantly focused on areas of kind of most gaps.
Yep.
So pick the areas that need the most help first. So yeah, that's to come in 2023.
Wow, that is a noisy plane.
Happy New Year.
There is looks like a B-52 bomber going directly above us right now, folks. Look, that's all incredibly exciting. I guess the one thing, if we can sneak it in, is you're going to be doing some sandboxing over the next little while. So this is out for consultation, and you're also getting companies to road test the framework, so before you finalise it, right?
Yeah, so we've got currently, obviously this is a UK jurisdictional approach at the moment, but we are running a online consultation, and then in parallel a sandbox. So that's basically a group of companies, coalition of the willing, that have come together to trial out reporting under our framework for this year. And we're going to be feeding back kind of how they're finding using it, so that it kind of forms like the qualitative part of some of the research that we're doing to improve the outputs for the next iteration. And if I was to do a small plug too, it would be great to see if we could do something with some Australian businesses as well, to see, because obviously this was developed initially for a UK jurisdictional approach, but there isn't any reason why it couldn't be beyond the UK. So it would be great to explore that further.
Yeah, which is something I'm really interested in. We've already had some chats about, and that's the work that EC and Client Work's been doing. There's also some great work that's been happening with the New South Wales government, so it will be wonderful if we can sort of bring all of this together and also develop that consistency across jurisdictions, which will make it that much easier for businesses to engage. Well, I'm delighted that we can catch up here at COP. I'm so glad I got to catch your 2 launch events, and just I want to say the best of luck. And
Thanks very much.
We're looking forward to continuing to work with you on this really important topic about how we support businesses to translate aspiration into action.
Great, thanks for having me on your iconic walking videos.
They're becoming a bit of a thing.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for inviting me.
Cheers, Jojo.